Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to say that we're here in Frankfurt today on the 14th of February, and we managed to catch up with Montie Brewer. Montie Brewer was the CEO of Air Canada and is now a board member of both Aer Lingus and Allegiant, two airlines that rely on direct distribution. Montie, it's great to see you. Thanks very much for agreeing to
Nice to be here, Richard.
You have a particular view on the problems in the airline industry. I think you call it the 5 problems or the 5 difficulties.
The 5 reasons why the airline industry as a whole will never be profitable.
Okay.
And it hasn't been profitable since Orville and Wilbur. And we go through great gyrations of great profitability and then great losses, which are becoming more and more extreme as we go along. The 5 reasons are, number 1 is it's a capacity-led model. The airline seat has been commoditized to such an extent that your revenue is tied to the amount of production you put into the marketplace. So if you want to grow your revenues, you have to grow your capacity. So you're basically putting your costs in front of your revenues instead of your revenues dragging your costs into the marketplace. Number 2 is the capacity-led model causes you to buy airplanes that you don't really need. And the number 2 problem is those airplanes stay around for 40 years. So you've made a bad capacity decision that kind of haunts you forever. Number 3 is labor. And it's not that we have unions in the airline business. It's the fact that the unions have a lot of control. They have economic power, but their governance of their organizations does not allow them to make the best economic decision for the members in the long term. They're very short-term focused. Number 4, the input costs are very volatile. With fuel, we've seen a spike go anywhere from $30 a barrel to $140, back down to $30 a barrel in a very short period of time. And to manage those kinds of spikes, you really need to carry a lot of cash. And in the airline business, it's very, very difficult to hold on to cash, mainly because the unions have a hard time. A union leader has a hard time standing in front of their members saying, no, the company really needs that cash and we don't deserve as much of a pay raise as we think we do. That's political suicide for any leader. And sometimes carrying that much cash is very difficult because you're just not making enough money to put that much cash aside. Number 5, everybody is happy the way it is and no one wants it to change except for the airline. The value chain, the customer, the governments are all very happy. So on the government side, they tax the industry quite creatively, anywhere from 10 to 25% depending on the country. They also know airplanes don't go away. So if an airline threatens that they'll go out of business because the tax burden is too heavy, they know that the airline will get restructured. The airplanes will continue to fly. If they don't fly them, some other airline will fly them, and the volume will still be there, and the tax revenues will still be there. Customers are happy. The fares have never been lower. Though they complain about service, there are more people flying and more people having access to global commerce. The value chain is extremely happy. The airlines have the lowest margin in the value chain, with the GDSs and the airports having some of the highest. And none of them really want to see the industry, the current situation change. So airlines find themselves in a very unique position where change is not welcomed by their suppliers upstream and downstream.
So they're stuck.
So they're stuck, so they're on their own. So they have to come up with a solution, no different than any other industry, but they have to come up with their own solutions to those 5 issues. And they're not going to get much help from the government or from the suppliers or from the customer.
In distribution, we don't see such price volatility.
No, it just goes up.
Long-term contracts.
Just goes up.
It just goes up. And what's your view on the challenges with distribution today?
Current distribution model through the GDSs causes it to be a commodity marketplace. And the carriers need to find ways to decommoditize themselves, which is very difficult with the current structure. The second one is the consumer's expectation of their relationship with the airline is changing. It's changing with all industries. They want more information, they want it on demand, they want to be able to purchase it whichever way they choose to purchase it, and they want more information about the product. And it's very difficult for the carriers to keep up with the changing consumer expectations. The third challenge the airlines have are the restrictive agreements they have with the current distributors. And those will have to change. The airlines need to keep up with the changing marketplace. They need to create new products that differentiate themselves, and they need to be able to present those to the consumer, which the consumer will appreciate the differentiation. And the current contracts today make it very difficult for that information to be portrayed the way it needs to be portrayed to the consumer.
What are the implications for a distribution strategy?
I think the problem is that you look at it as a distribution strategy. In fact, it's really a commercial strategy in which distribution plays a role. And I think a lot of airlines are realizing they have a product that they can differentiate, and they can create products that have actual added value than just flying you from A to B. The challenge is, once you develop these new products that solve your differentiation problem, how do you distribute those to the customer in the way in which the customer would like to receive it? And that's where the friction is showing up. So when you come up with a distribution strategy, it isn't for the distribution part of the commercial team to figure out what to do. It's a company-wide plan that's got to take place, and distribution's got to be an outcome of that, not an input.
The tendency, Monty, has been to a consolidated industry with very large players. Do you think that the product strategies can be multiple inside an airline? Do you think an airline can have multiple products?
Carriers differentiate today. They just don't get the differentiation to the marketplace as efficiently as they like. I'm still amazed that when you buy a seat on the website, be it a OTA or a carrier's online site, that if I buy a business class seat, I don't get a picture of the seat floating in front of me before I decide to pay the $5,000. There's lots of differentiation out there. The customer's just not seeing it.
Do you not think that loyalty programs and frequent flyers have had an influence in some of that? In other words, the key airlines are offering, the travellers already understand the differentiation, and therefore they don't need the communication.
The true customers that on the international business side that the airlines would like to go after hold 3 or 4 different frequent flyer cards. So they fly enough to have choice. But it can never hurt to get your differentiation in front of someone else's frequent flyer to realize what they're missing by just flying on an inferior product. The frequent flyer program is a great example. It has allowed the carriers to differentiate, but just think how long that's been around. And there's got to be other ways to drive loyalty through the size of the offering to the customer.